Hi, everyone. Jose Palomino again with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Our guest today is Dan McGaw of McGaw.io. And Dan is a specialist in helping mid-market and large enterprises as well to integrate and take advantage of all the really cool marketing technology that's out there. There's software, cloud-based applications, there's all kinds of things that can help you engage with your customers more deeply, have better relationship with them, have more contact with them, and do it in a way that adds value for them. So really listen closely. If you've ever thought about, hey, there's got to be a better way of doing this, and clearly the world is changing and you want to be there for that. So listen closely as Dan joins our show. Well, welcome, Dan, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, now Dan, just as we like to do, is we always like our guests to because they can really catch it in the most pithy way possible. Who do you serve, and what do you do for them?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. I typically, the type of company that we work with are typically mid-market companies all the way up to enterprise companies. And we typically are working more with the CMOs, CIOs, and VPs marketing of a lot of these companies. And what we offer is we're a marketing technology and marketing analytics agency. So we help companies ultimately choose their tools, integrate those tools, operate those tools, and then leverage those tools to grow their business. So we're really the strong technical side of a marketing team. We do a lot of the technical work for those teams, but we're really focused on helping companies build world-class tech stacks to help them grow their business. So it's all focused on their revenue infrastructure.
Okay, so right, so not IT in the broad sense of IT, but IT as it relates to those things that are available today to help people grow their business. So that's
Yeah.
an area that I'd like to dig in with you a little bit, especially there may be people listening and say, well, I run a small company and I don't tech stack and I don't even know what that means exactly. And yet I think in actuality, they already have a tech stack. They just may not know it explicitly. So
Yeah.
for our audience, maybe describe a few things like what are some marketing technologies that might be, and especially that might appeal to the mid-market as opposed to, what Google might do with unlimited money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the easiest thing that you can put your finger at when you think about a marketing technology is your website is a core component of your marketing technology, right? That is a technology product. It is part of your marketing. So your website is, of course, the basis. But you have to take into consideration things like your marketing automation platform, whether you're using HubSpot, Autopilot, ActiveCampaign, or even one of the bigger tools like Marketo or Pardot. That's a part of your tech stack. Salesforce, if you're using Salesforce, that's a part of your tech stack. Google Analytics, that's a part of your tech stack. So any type of tool or technology that you're doing or using to run your business is going to be a part of that tech stack. Now, where this gets more complicated is, of course, does that tool share data with other tools? And of course, if you have HubSpot and let's say Salesforce connected, naturally those two tools are talking together all the time. They have a sync between their stuff. That's some of the most important parts of your tech stack. And that's what the stack is when you have all those tools set up, but they're all integrated together to pass data around in a really, really successful way. That's going to be when you can really create some additional marketing automation, personalization, lead scoring, be able to do marketing or sales to any of the leads you have in your system.
Right. So let's say somebody listening says, well, listen, I got like two sales reps and, we have somebody answer the phone, but, we're a 10 million, $15 million company doing that manufacturing.
Yeah.
Do I really need to dig into all this technology stuff? Because, we're like a relationship business. We people know us.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
What's the
if
thought there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're a relationship business, that's great. You still need to track that relationship, right? At the end of the day, these relationships you're having, in many cases, are phone calls, which can be tracked, or also emails that can be tracked, text messages that can be tracked. And you need to, of course, be able to track those relationships because a simple thing that you would say is great. Well, you have relationships. Well, what about the people you're not talking to right now? You don't really have a relationship over there. And how do you identify the people that you should be talking to that you're not, right? And that's where the technology really comes in and helps you understand, like, hey, listen, Joe, I haven't talked to him in 9 months. I should probably talk to him. Humans, we forget about it, right? The technology can really support that and make sure that you can keep those relationships. And really, when you think about relationship technology in general, I mean, there's a lot of cool platforms out there that enable you to even be better at your relationship with these people, right? You can, of course, be able to use a product like Client Giant, right? Which is great for anybody who's in the relationship business. I use Client Giant. It's integrated in with Salesforce. So every single quarter, my clients get a present from me. So that way I stay top of mind for them. And this is extremely helpful, right? Because I need to keep building that relationship. But I don't have the time to pick out individual presents for all of my clients. So I use Client Giant, which is integrated in with Salesforce, to make sure that I have the best relationship of all with all of my clients, right? So you have to use technology to help you accomplish your job, be able to automate more so that way you can do more with less. So, while somebody's a relationship based company, there's definitely a lot of technology which is going to power your business either way. And that's where the flip side of this goes is it's not just focused on marketing and sales. Your business is a platform full of data, right? All of your data in QuickBooks is an example, right? QuickBooks is a technology product. That tool integrates in with tons of other tools. So in our business, what we're most focused on is how do you take the data out of all of these other tools and then use them, whether that be for reporting, automation, personalization, or anything of the like.
Hey, pardon the interruption. It'll just be a beat. We want to tell you about something that's really exciting, and it might be very exciting to you if you're the owner, CEO, leader of a B2B company, roughly with $2 to $20 million in revenue, and you feel a little bit stuck. You know what I mean? Sales are a little flat, maybe even declining, challenged. Margins are being squeezed. Sales cycles seem to be lengthening, and lead flow is uncertain. We've designed a program based on over a dozen years of us doing exactly this for many B2B companies. It's called the Competitive Edge Program. And you can learn more about it at valueprop.com/edge. Tells you all about the program. It's a 90-day program, really focused on helping you sharpen your value proposition, aligning your value delivery, making sure your marketing program is doing what it has to do if you're in B2B, which is generate opportunities, and make sure your sales process is tight so that you can convert those opportunities into sales. So with that note, let's get back to an exciting episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Wow, so it's interesting because you alluded to a few things that a lot of people listening to this probably use, like anything from QuickBooks to Salesforce. And certainly they built their website on something, whether it's WordPress based with some other plugins or using something like HubSpot's pretty common these days. It's not unusual, or something like Keep that I guess used to be Infusionsoft or something like that, right? So those are all things that they're trying to do to leverage very expensive resources, which are people, the most expensive thing you're going to have, to get more out of them. And the other thing you hit on, I think it's really important to highlight it, Dan, is humanly speaking, I mean, unless you're like a savant or something, you really can't keep track of when's the last time I talked to Joe, Mary, or Beth at that company by just sheer memory. Maybe if I was working a deal with them and we're active, I'll remember that. But the normal touch points that you have to manage a territory, you can't keep that in your head. You can't keep that in a notebook. And it won't, and even if you do, you have to, it's a lot of work to get at it, to figure it out. So these technologies that you're referring to really help you automate that. That's a really big idea. So here's a question.
Yeah.
There's somebody listening says, man, that sounds great. Dan, I believe, but that seems like a lot of work and a lot of expense. Does it have to be like a moonshot, or can somebody increment into doing more and more over time?
Yeah, and that's highly what we recommend, is to increment more and more over time. So I think at the end of the day, when people try to overbuild something or try to set out and build this huge giant thing, in many cases it takes too long, things break, things change by the time we even get it built. So we do recommend to increment at one time. You want to start out small and then continue to build that funnel and automate that funnel however you can. There's a lot of cool tools out there which are pretty simple and cheap to use. I mean, one of my favorite tools that I always try to introduce people to is a product called Zapier. Zapier enables you to any of your tools, whether that be Gmail to QuickBooks or your calendar to an Excel sheet. It enables you to connect anything. And those products, I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes they're a little hard to figure out if you get into the real technical weeds of it. But for most of the use cases, like with a Zapier, I mean, it's plug and play. I mean, it's really, really self-explanatory. They have good documentation. But even in my own business, right, we automate everything we possibly can using a product like Zapier, so that way we spend less money on humans, right? It's the cost benefit analysis is obviously immense. So highly recommend for people to use cool products like Zapier that even automate small things before you try to automate everything in your ecosystem, right? Build one thing at a time.
Well, and we didn't talk about this before, but you mentioned Zapier. So I use Zapier with my calendar application, which I use Acuity, and link it up to Zoom, so that when somebody wants to, let's say, get on a coaching call with me, they set up the coaching call. And for those who aren't familiar with calendar setting tools, they're becoming a lot more common. But basically, it lets my client or my prospect actually pick a time that works for them against an open slot on my calendar. And then Zapier allows us to set up an instant Zoom session, automatically for that call. So that call, boom, now they're on and so I don't have to worry about it. They're on my calendar. The Zoom's been set up. They got the information. So I'm just, Dan, you're right on. I mean, that's just, and we're no great geniuses at this. We have to figure it out a little bit, but it was doable. And in a day we had it set up. I have a great COO who knows how to do things like that, but still it wasn't rocket surgery, to your point.
Yeah, no, and that's what I love Zapier for. I mean, we use one of the biggest things that had a lot of moving pieces in our organization is, when we actually close a business deal in Salesforce, right? We opportunity close. We've got to create new time trackers. We've got to create new Trello boards. We've got to create new Slack channels. We have to get everything prepared so that client who we just, of course, got acquired, of course, has to get onboarded. That process would take one of our assistants anywhere between 2 to 3 hours sometimes to get all those things started and get all those things rolling. At the end of the day, we were able to set it up in Zapier, and now when somebody closes an opportunity, all of those things are automatically created. They're populated with everything that they need. The team is basically able to get started within a matter of a couple of days. So automation is huge, right? It really can change your business. I mean, and don't get me wrong, in our business, we take automation to an extreme. But for most companies, you don't need to overthink it. Just think like, what is this process I do over and over and over again? I want to stop doing that process. How do I automate that? Chances are there's a pretty good way to do it. I will be clear though, you can't automate everything. There's still always a point that you need a human, and use a human, right? Don't be scared to do it.
Well, but you also mentioned something else I think is important to know, right? So when people hear automation and think, oh, we're getting rid of people and we're a people business. And in fact, what you said is in many ways the opposite's what's happened. Is no, you're wasting your people on mundane, repetitive tasks that they don't like. The customer's not getting a lot of value out of it. So automate those things out of the way. So now you have people who can engage with people more meaningfully. They have a little bit more margin or more space of time to actually have real good conversation, maybe listen to customer needs even more deeply, rather than just like they're banging through to get a punch list done, which could have been done automatically. I mean, I see that as a huge opportunity in the kind of stuff you do, Dan.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's the whole goal, is to make it so that people can focus on the things that they're good at and stop doing the mundane stuff that we can automate.
Now, when we come to CRM, right, I just want to allude to that, which is like the granddaddy of like, revenue automation tools, but, perhaps just as a category.
Yeah.
And of course, the CRMs existed before Salesforce, but Salesforce really paved the way for like, cloud-based thing. What we now know is everything's on the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So, but yet when I work with clients, inevitably I find that they really underutilize, whether it's Salesforce or some other CRM platform. They go in one or two directions. They use it as just a big Rolodex, okay, or they've configured it so incredibly in such a complex way that no one understands what's there, and the salespeople hate it. So they just hate the fact that they have to update so many things, because somebody thought, well, gee, it'd be great if we had reporting at like the 18th atomic level of detail, right? So what do you advise a client when they're saying, well, we haven't really done much. We have Salesforce, we've had it for a couple of years. We're not really using it the way we think it should be used. You'll hear that. I'm sure you hear that all the time. What's the best advice? Like, what do you think is the first, like, a 1-year process to take advantage of Salesforce for companies that already have it, or they have Zoho, or they have one of the other CRM platforms?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it is a database of all of your customers, right? So it is able to help you understand that relationship that you have with them and be able to track, in essence, over time, what's going on with that customer. One of the things that we always try to make sure that we see companies do is, if you have doesn't matter what CRM you have, you want to be able to make sure that your email is integrated in with it. So that way, every email activity that happens with the customer is, of course, saved in Salesforce or whatever CRM you have. Same thing goes with any of the inbound or outbound calls or text messages. You want to make sure that those activity histories can be saved on that customer because, while you might be a sales rep here today, your role might change next month and you might become a customer success person. You no longer are in the sales organization. Somebody else has to pick up that contact and know exactly what has been happening. So, from a really simple perspective, you have to make sure that all of your customer communication does wind up in there because that's going to be what really helps set up the game for the future. But on the other side of that, at the end of the day, the biggest thing you want to be able to track inside of your CRM is understanding what is going to be your sales pipeline, what is going to be your sales forecast, as well as like where is your pipeline going, like where is it coming from, things like that. So you do want to try to get your marketing information inside of Salesforce, knowing where people came from, knowing which campaigns they were a part of. That way, of course, you can understand like what is driving pipeline. But you should be trying to make sure that you have good opportunity stages, you have good things set up like that, so you understand where are you at in your forecast, where are you at in your pipeline. So that way you can make sure you hit your numbers for this month or the following months. A lot of companies simply just use it as a place to store their contacts. And that's just not good enough. Like you need to add more to that. You need to be able to use the reporting that's there for you to be able to kind of make sure that you can drive your team forward to grow your business. You can't really do that if you don't have pipelines set up. You don't have your pipeline stages set up or anything like that. So those would be some of the basics I would recommend getting started with. And then if you're going to push that forward, what you really, really want to do is make sure that your CRM is integrated in with your marketing automation tool. So if you have HubSpot CRM and HubSpot marketing automation, great, they're connected. But if you've got Salesforce or Sugar or whatever it may be, you've got to connect something like a Pardot or a Marketo. Even HubSpot integrates in with Salesforce. You really need to get those two things connected because as your sales reps are doing things, you need that to be updated in the marketing world. And then the marketing world needs to make sales updated when they make changes too. But if you have those two things working together, you can automate a lot of your practices in Salesforce using that marketing automation tool to really drive your business forward, push growth, be able to push on marketing automation or personalization. So make sure as the big one, you have those two connected.
Wow. So, okay. So let's say somebody's thinking marketing automation. I've read about HubSpot. I'm not sure I'm ready to bite into that, but we want to at least be able to send some sort of automated emails, so like we'd like to just send out a newsletter every now and then. It's just like, on MailChimp. What do you think? And you hear so many things. Some people, I've had clients say, I don't want to be that intrusive email, vendor. So I think I'll send one email a month, on that end. And the other one says, well, I just discovered email and MailChimp, and I want to send out an email twice a day. So I'm just curious from a best practice, even if it's anecdotal at this point, what's your sense of in the B2B categories? What kind of rhythm or cadence is realistic for a company to think about embracing email, which is going to be probably their first foray into really building any kind of funnel process?
Yeah, I think from a marketing automation point, while you do have all these marketing automation suites, the one thing I will say is you have products like SalesLoft, Outreach, Mixmax, things like that, that enable you to automate your sales reps' emails compared to just sending a newsletter. I would highly recommend using those products if you're trying to, of course, communicate with your contacts and be able to get them through a sales deal, because that enables the sales rep to automate what they have going on. But with that being said, whenever you're in the MailChimp or Marketo world or any of those other products and you're trying to send a newsletter, newsletters in most cases are kind of a waste of time, right? Nobody really cares about your newsletter. You should more focus on how do you send email to deliver value for your customers. So maybe it's a new feature you have. How are you going to deliver that to them and deliver value? If you don't have something valuable to send them that they are going to find valuable, you probably shouldn't be sending them an email. That's kind of the general rule of thumb that I would tell people. You don't want to send 2 emails a day, right? Like that's going to kill them. But if you have a sales rep who's going to be emailing them a couple times in a week or a few times in a month, just make sure those emails all deliver value to that customer and are helping them, not helping yourself. And then that's going to be the way that you're not being a pest or annoying or anything like that. If somebody unsubscribes, they unsubscribe, right? Like that's part of the game. The thing that I'll just say is that nobody went out of business from talking to their customers. And I meet way too many companies who are afraid to email their customers or call their customers or text their customers. At the end of the day, nobody went out of business from contacting their customers. Many companies have gone out of business from not communicating with their customers. So I lean more to the spectrum of you do want to keep them up to date. You do want to have communication with them. If they unsubscribe, that's fine, right? But if you never email them in the first place, they're never going to know you exist.
Well, Dan, I think that's like a pull quote off of this interview, because that I love it. No, really, it's one of those things that when you hear it, you go, anybody listening is going to go, well, yeah, that's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious, but people act differently to that. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
the door not knocked on won't open. I mean, that's it. The door knocked on may not open, but that's the only shot you got, right? And I love the idea
Yeah.
of adding value, thinking, really you have to think of it. It sounds like what you're saying is you have to think of it this way, that if I got this email, would that add to my day, or would it be a drag? Would I be like, oh, this guy again? And
Yeah.
I get so many emails every day telling me how they're going to improve my SEO, rebuild my website. They're going to get me, guaranteed 22 leads a month or whatever, the promise is. And I'm even getting them now. They're not even identifying the company they're with. They're just using a Gmail thing. And it's like really, like that's what you're doing? Like that was somebody's big idea. So it's just funny to me anyway. So adding
Yeah.
value. But if somebody sends me an interesting article in an area that I'm interested in, I'll read it and I'll bookmark it. I might even share it. And it makes me more interested in working with that person or that firm.
Mm. Yeah. You got to build a
So
relationship.
now is it fairly true at this point that in terms of most sales and marketing activities, as we sit here in 2021 going into 2022, that there's a tool for everything pretty much at this point? Is the market
Yeah.
that mature in terms of the technology that's out there?
For the most part, right? I mean, I obviously there's always going to be a problem, right? And it's interesting because there's a tool for everything, right? There's so many tools that are just built on top of Salesforce that there's tools built on top of the tools which are built on top of Salesforce. So, there's always going to be an excuse for a new tool, right? So because as multiple platforms come up, there's one problem that they don't solve, somebody's going to create a tool for it. But there really is a tool that does just about everything nowadays. So pretty impressive stuff.
Well, and so that would suggest that the days of even especially a mid-market company having to go into the market, hire developers, and try to customize a stack from scratch is not necessary. You wouldn't recommend like a scratch effort unless they really are some incredible. They sell nuclear power plants or something very unique.
Yeah. And even if you have nuclear power plants, there's big companies out there that sell that type of stuff. You don't need to build a tech stack because you need to do marketing or sales, right? Now, do you need to build a product so that way other people can buy it? Maybe, right? But for most of the things inside of the stack now, or what you would need to run your business, there's plenty of tools to do it. And, I come from the ages when there wasn't tools, right? I mean, I got my start in 98 sending mass emails since before there was even MailChimp, right? So like I remember the days when you had to build your own billing system and build your own user management platform. But really, there's a tool that does all of that now. I mean, the world is basically a bunch of APIs, and you can integrate with almost all those platforms and do whatever you want. So, yeah, I think that's a really big point, is that you don't really need to build as much as you used to. Most cases, you should focus on buying.
And I guess the last one is just doubling down on a sentiment you already expressed, but I just want to make sure we land on it squarely, that whatever you do,
Yeah.
your recommendation is make sure it adds value to your target audience.
Absolutely, right? So I definitely think that's really, really important. With all of your messaging, you need to be delivering value. And I wrote a book on all this stuff called Build Cool Shit, right? And in that book, we talk about like, hey, what are the mainstays of the stack? But also talk about like, what are the engagements that you should use to kind of reach out to your customers? And what I'd love to do is offer everybody who's listening a free copy of that book. We'll actually ship it to you if you're in the United States. To get a copy of that book, all you have to do is pull out your cell phone, right? What I'm going to have you do is go to your text messages. You're going to text the word MARTECH, so MARTECH to this number, and it will actually collect all of your information and send you a book. The phone number is going to be 415 915 9011. I'll say that number again. It's 415 915 9011. And if you text the word MARTECH to it, our texting bot, which is part of our stack, integrated in with Salesforce, integrated in with my advertising, integrated with all the things, including my fulfillment provider, will collect your information, collect your address, and then automatically ship you the book. So that will give you a first world experience of how you deliver value to somebody through a marketing message, and then how that works out through technology, because you'll get that book to your home in a few weeks. Sorry for the US Post Service being so slow, but you'll be able to get that book directly to your house. And the entire process is automated.
And That's Martech.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Martech. Martech.
Okay. Done. So I will be getting
I
your
love it.
book. That's fantastic. That's brilliant. I love it. It's great. And Dan, I thank you so much for really just shedding light on something that, at first blush, people might feel like, man, that's overwhelming, it's daunting and so on, but you've really made it very simple for us. If somebody listening wanted to know more about, certainly can get your book, but they wanted to know more about you or contact you, how should they best reach out to you?
Yeah, the best place to find most of the stuff that I'm doing is, of course, on my website, McGaw.io. Really, really easy to find me there. But, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you really want to have a conversation, ask a question, or engage with what I have going on, go over to LinkedIn, just look up Dan McGaw. Of course, you'll be able to find my pretty face there. And then let's just have a conversation. Always happy to help out.
Dan, thank you so much for being part of the Revenue Throughput podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Revenue Throughput podcast. If you like this episode and if you like the series, make sure you subscribe below. And also, if you liked it, please do review it. When people are looking for something exciting to listen to, especially the kind of content we're bringing, which is practical insights for B2B companies, this is a place and a free resource that they can take advantage of. Let them know about it with your review. So subscribe, review, enjoy. Thanks again.